Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. On the second hour, we are focusing on Kenya's mortality rate and teenage pregnancies that has been on the rise in a number of devolved units following to various reports that have been issued by key stakeholders and civil society groups across the country. Joining us is Elizabeth Wanjiku, the director of Baby Banda. Elizabeth, thank you for making time for us this morning on NewsCheck.
Thank you for having me.
And before I start posing my questions to you, Elizabeth, Kenya's mortality rates vary between the age groups. 2022 Demographic and Health Survey reported that a crude death rate of approximately 7.83%, that is approximately 1,000 people, a neonatal mortality rate of 21%, where 1,000 live births, an infant mortality rate of 32%, approximately the same 1,000 live births are under the age and under the 5 mortality rate of 41%. Childhood mortality rate, in essence, in Kenya has been significantly declining from earlier peaks in the early 2000s. In terms of these statistics that we're witnessing and the mortality rates that are going down in the country, should we be concerned?
It has both there's a lot of optimism around it, and even with the optimism, there's still a lot of work to be done.
Yes.
On the optimistic side,
yes,
there's really an improvement. Over the last 10 decades, there's really been an improvement in terms of maternal mortality rate and also the neonatal one as well. The number of mothers surviving birth and the number of children surviving birth has increased. I mean, that is the improvement, but still, as of 2024, the number of mothers still at 530 per 100,000 births.
Okay.
So 530 mothers don't make it during the birth process, and that is your data as of 2024. And currently, also for children, 29 births in 1,000 children don't survive the birth process. So, we can say that there's improvement, but even those 530 mothers, there's still someone's sister, there's still someone, so there's still a lot of work to be done to actually reduce this rate. Yes.
And what are some of the challenges you have noted, given that you're in this particular sector when it comes to the status of motherhood in this particular country? What are some of the challenges you have noted that could inform some of the statistics, the varying statistics that we are witnessing?
So it's an interesting dynamic because it also goes county to county. Some counties that really have better health facilities, and mothers have also lack of delay. So if you look at our highest mortality rate, West Pokot, Samburu, these counties are facing a lot more challenges because healthcare facilities are still far. So a pregnant mother still takes so much time, transport cost, so much delay in reaching. When they reach these health facilities, the drugs, the things that they need are not available. And these are part of the things that are causing higher mortality rates. So it's actually based on county to county. So counties that have a higher poverty rate, they're facing more challenges in this as compared to Nairobi County, which has healthcare facilities are within reachable route. And the things that people would actually have a challenge with are around healthcare professionals. So those are some of the reasons that are causing still this gap to continue still in our present 2025.
And interestingly, given that you have given us the distinct views from different particular counties, there are even people who, especially mothers who are in the rural setup, they're preferring more traditional means than to the medical one. In terms of informing these mothers the opportunities that are within the medical facilities that we do have in this particular country, but many still opt for the traditional means. Is it a lack of awareness or a lack of policy that has informed that?
So there's a lot of education that needs to go into this. There's a lack of education, empowering a lot of moms to understand why good healthcare ensures their survival. Because as much as home births have now in other counties, it's been a modernized method. People can have home births with a doula. But in rural areas, the facilities, the infrastructure, and even the cost of it doesn't allow for them to have all these necessary things. So if any complications develops at that process, they won't be the doula is not a healthcare professional. They may not be able to realize that actually we are about to have this lady is having high blood pressure. There's no measurement for that. The risks that come with they have sugar issues that now may challenge that pregnancy, or the dilation process in terms of how the baby is positioned. In some instances, they may not have the tools to detect if, let's say, the cord is around the neck. They may not have this, you know, in terms of facilities. So we really do, this is a policy issue. There needs to be a lot of education. And that's why even for our, for Baby Banda, that we hold these fairs. We hold our Baby Banda fairs countrywide. We currently have the Baby Banda Pregnancy and Baby Fair. It's happening at Sarit Center this weekend. And one of the things which is very critical is that we're doing a lot of capacity building in terms of educating and informing moms, because even the ones who have a lot of information, they still need to come to a position of, this is not just Google information, it's not AI. You still need to talk to an expert, because it's a very individual journey and individual process. So we create capacity as a business. So we have capacity building, and this is something we do countrywide in terms of capacity building for mothers. So I think a lot of education, of course, if government could support, it would really make a huge difference, because it's a huge budget to be able to, you know, support the logistics and also support this capacity building of mothers, especially in rural areas.
Now, if you're still joining us this morning, we're still conversing when it comes to the Kenya's mortality rate. Here with us is Elizabeth Wanjiku, the director of Baby Banda. Elizabeth, before we went to the address of the CS, we were talking about the cost of medication when it comes to many women who are pregnant. You see, most of them will opt to traditional means as opposed to the current medical way because of the cost of medication. So in terms of informing that, how has your institution, when it comes to capacity building this women who are pregnant and they are seeking these services, to ensure that they do it the correct way that will ensure that they survive?
Oh, thank you for that. I mean, that is a very important topic to really discuss around around the healthcare affordability, and this is for drugs and medication. So, of course, a lot of women will use this to avoid the cost that comes with giving birth at a health facility because of the perception of the cost of it. So, what we do as Baby Banda is that one of our key things is that we do a lot of capacity building, and capacity building in that we bring healthcare professionals in one area. So, the gynecologists, your breastfeeding experts, your lactation experts, your dermatologists. We bring all the stakeholders that mothers would want to hear from and offer this for free for moms in terms of information. So the one that we are doing this year, one of the capacity building forums that we are doing this year is the Baby Banda Fair, which will be at Sarit Center from Friday, Saturday and Sunday this week. And it, you know, there's a lot of available experts to speak to. There's nutritionists, because also nutrition is one of the things that pregnancy, during the pregnancy journey, that really needs to be looked at depending on deficiency, because also deficiencies tend to develop during pregnancy, you know. That's when women discover have low, you discover things like low iron and all of this. So we have nutritionists in terms of, you know, showcasing moms about their food that they eat, and we have gynecologists so that you can be able to understand. We're giving free scans so that mothers can see how the baby is doing. Of course, we also add a lot of fun for them. We have a free maternity shoot for the mothers. So all of these are just part of bringing mothers to a space where they can be able to get services that they would ideally pay for and give them at a cost that is free. So that's one part of one of the areas that Baby Banda really plays in terms of the mother and informing them and educating them so that they are they have enough capacity to make good decisions in terms of what they get and to understand where they are in their pregnancy journey and what is happening to them.
The other issue that we were conversing earlier on before we took that particular break is the issue of stigmatization. You see, there are parents who even opt to go the cesarean way as to oppose the traditional way of giving birth. So in terms of dealing with this stigmatization issue, is it something that you have witnessed in your career?
Oh, of course, yeah. We've seen this a lot. I mean, there's always been, I mean, the conversation between did you have a C-section or did you have a vaginal birth? And, you know, there's always been a badge, which now in 2025 is changing, that you had a vaginal birth as compared to someone else who had a C-section, a cesarean. And most of the time, cesareans are actually emergency processes. I mean, there's also elective and the rest. So there's always that thing of, did you really suffer through the pain of childbirth if you had a C-section as compared to if you did a vaginal birth? And of course, women women, especially rural settings, you know, you'll always hear the comments with the older women, of the younger women who choose to have C-section, and are you not strong enough? You know, why couldn't you do this pushing business? You know, what is the problem? You don't like pain. You know, there's just a lot of stigma around in rural areas more. So it's something that in 2025 is, of course, being challenged with your Gen Z's mom. Gen Z's mom, don't fear. Don't fear, you know, making some bold decisions. But then if you go to the rural mother, it's still a stigma that, you know, I mean, strong women actually push babies out. They don't go for cesareans. But that concept, you know, it's just being challenged. But yeah, in rural areas, it's still a big problem in terms of stigmatizing that you are not strong enough, your body was weak, or you chose the easier way out. You know, it's conversations that we still like to really inform and teach moms about in terms of these areas, empowering, because it's still an empowering thing, of empowering moms to actually understand what does pregnancy look like, what are the key things that should be a focus for you, healthy mom, healthy baby. You know, it's not the method. So these are conversations as Baby Banda we really focus on in terms of empowering the moms through our education forums, and just the areas that we end up doing capacity building in various platforms. So it's something that we inform the mom. It's a lot about information and people understanding just the whole process of birth and what the woman undergoes and the choices that are made. Because even some of these choices are economic. It could be, there are many reasons why people choose the ones who go the elective way, because you can also choose to still have a C-section. But all of these choices are still the individual and what it is, their personality, their body, how it is they are relating to the pregnancy. So some of them is a health risk and some is a choice. And, you know, in 2025, you know, there's a little bit more freedom on choice for mothers because these decisions were also made largely by society. But now there's a lot of empowering also on the mother coming up to be able to be a decision maker in her own health journey and process. So that's one of the things as Baby Banda, we also really empower moms through teaching, even on contraceptives, on care for yourself after pregnancy, on just even your pregnancy and your health through the forums that we do. And this we do countrywide in terms of education and empowering moms.
Okay. And of course, in terms of a key stakeholder in this particular sector, do you feel the relevant institutions have done enough to support your organizations and other stakeholders within the sector?
So that's a very good question. They haven't done enough. I mean, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but there's a lot that is needed. There's some institutions, private institutions, MasterCard Foundation that, you know, do this work, but we haven't seen a lot of government support in terms of the maternal area. Linda Mama was a good initiative because it really offered free maternity health. And this really enabled a lot of moms to be able to, you know, give births for free without now the issues that we are talking about. And that's why we can see also a decrease in terms of the mortality rate right now. So we really wish the Ministry of Health would actually really support this segment of maternal health as a sensitive area from Pumwani to, you know, the hospitals, Mama Lucy. These setups for urban like Nairobi need a lot of support and a lot of upcountry. So there's still a lot that the government needs to do. Maternal advocacy is a very difficult space in itself, just because it's a very small segment within the whole healthcare segment. Yeah, you're talking within a 9-month journey and birth, and after that, then maternal moves to another segment because it's now parenting. So in that 9 months, there's a lot the government can do to support that process, to even empower the hospitals and provide facilities that, you know, empower the facilities that mothers have in terms of access in the birth process, in aiding, empowering a lot of education for the nurses. So we can only do so much. For us, we empower the mothers as Baby Banda, but I feel there's a lot of work they can do in terms of empowering the midwives, the nurses, in terms of the nurturing of the birth process. So there's still a lot of work there to be done, and we really actually would seek Ministry of Health to really support this segment and support organizations like ours that really do support, you know, support the mother and baby and focus solely on that area for mother and baby.
And I can see even there's a question I was reading earlier on before you continue, of a viewer asking, is this something that is being covered under SHA when it comes to maternal care?
So currently it's covered. So I mean, like, I feel SHA has had its own challenges, and I do feel maybe some hospitals have been able to utilize it more than others. And also I do feel organizations also took their time in onboarding the SHA program in the shift between from NHIF to SHA. So we can see that it's still a covered area, but now I feel like it's a challenge between different hospitals and who is getting their funds much faster to meet this cost as compared to a challenge of that they are not able to access it, to access the funds. Like, it's very oriented towards the hospitals. Yeah.
And of course, let's shift gears, Elizabeth, given that we're running out of time. There is a shocking report that revealed that 1,073 teenage girls, especially in Lamu County, have been impregnated between 24 and mid-25, with many cases linked to sexual violence, defilement, and forced early marriages. Now, the human rights group Muslim for Human Rights, that is Muhuri, and Kenya Human Rights Commission, KHRC, say despite repeated warnings, government leaders have failed to take decisive action, leaving vulnerable girls without protection or support. Now, according to the data submitted by the Lamu County Gender Sector Working Group to the Presidential Technical Group on Gender Violence, that is GBV, and femicide, that cases 789 pregnancies were recorded in 2024, with an additional 284 cases reported between January and May 2025. That is a similar report that was raised even in 2022. You do know the Presidential Technical Working Group on Gender Violence and Femicide have been crisscrossing the country, taking the views of Kenyans alike. In terms of you, I want to get your views, given that you're in this particular sector. Should we be talking about this particular issue, especially right now as a country?
I mean, to be honest, it's really a sad issue that we're still talking about teenage pregnancy. I mean, as a mother of a teenager at the moment, I mean, I cannot imagine what it looks like for a teenager for you to say that a teenager is pregnant. You know, it's just shocking and sad. And I do feel there's so many factors that are contributing to this issue on the teenage, because we can see there's a drop. There's a drop in the urban centers, and yet there's a rise in the rural setting. And clearly, I mean, it's so clear that the issues around teenage pregnancy is really an economic issue. It's a poverty issue. I mean, this is what one of the biggest driving factors are poverty issues, where teenagers end up getting pregnant, and sadly then it keeps them in a cycle of poverty. So I feel that we shouldn't be hearing this in 2025 in a country that has so much in terms of resources and can be supported. And that's why you're seeing it, because even as you look at the data, it's really happening more in rural Kenya. Early marriages, which are still, early marriages which are cultural issues, are still, girls are still in that segment. Still, it's called teenage pregnancy, and this is part of the classification around teenage pregnancy. So I think we need to put a little more work as the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Health in combination around this issue, and more educating the girls, because it's also an issue of education. You see, in a setting where poverty, someone is caught up in, a family is caught up in the cycle of poverty, there's also lack of education as well. So these girls are not empowered to understand their health, to understand how their bodies are developing, to understand the risks that come with it, to understand exploitation, because they are also in a need of desperation in terms of just your typical basics of food, clothing, and shelter. So if a girl is caught up in that, and already education is a challenge, then teenage pregnancies continue to be seen in this year and age. But that's why we are saying in urban areas, in basically Nairobi County and towns, you can see there's a decrease, but still in rural areas, it's still a trend that is taking place.
And of course, that is majorly the report that was even raised by KHRC and Muhuri that they were presenting in that particular committee. Of course, they're witnessing between the girls aged between 15 to 19, which are tender years of a teenager. And of course, KHRC also named counties of the highest per capita contribution crisis. But going back to the age group, in terms of who has failed these young girls, who has dropped the ball here, Elizabeth? Because 15 to 19, you expect these girls to be in school, getting education, and of course moving on with their lives. But in terms of who should be taking this responsibility, who should we be asking these questions? I
mean, it's a question that keeps coming up, and I find it sad when I hear people say it's the parent problem, or is it, I find that blame, I mean, like, also to be unfair. as well as, of course, it will hold water in different cases. But I do feel that the issue on teenage pregnancies is a poverty problem. Because you see, a girl in urban Kenya, let's say Nairobi, who would get pregnant at the age of 16, this is in secondary school, I mean, the parents would ideally be able to let the birth continue, take the baby, care for the baby as the girl pursues education. You know, I mean, it's something that parents who can take the initiative to manage rather than stigmatize and make it an issue of life has come to an end. You know, that's the stigma, again, with teenage pregnancy, that it's come to an end. But for me, teenage pregnancies are an issue of poverty. The cycle of poverty continues because the girl drops out of school, they are pregnant, they get into a cycle again of opportunity lost in terms of their future. So it still continues. So this is not an issue that you can say, I'm giving blame solely to the parents or I'm giving blame solely to the society or solely to the school, because the whole system needs to be able to support in terms of empowering young girls, in terms of really their body, what is changes are happening and what are the consequences. I mean, growing up, we had these people come to school when we were 12 years old. I mean, we had companies like always, they would come and teach girls and say, you know, this is what is happening to you. This is what is happening to you. These are pads. How do you use them? You know, this is how your body is changing. Now you're at risk of pregnancy. You know, there's HIV out there. You know, you're given all of these conversations and they really help. So it's also an issue of empowerment. You know, empower the girls more. I think rural areas, the government needs to put a lot of effort through the Ministry of Education in ensuring that girls are getting this information.
Okay, continue.
Yeah. No, I'd finished.
Okay. I wanted to ask you, because you've raised a very pertinent issue when it comes to stigmatization. For the parents out there in the society at large, how should they deal with these teenage girls who are pregnant in terms of ensuring that they move on with their life, but take care of that young one that they're carrying?
Yeah, so I would say, like, as a parent, I mean, as an ultimate responsibility for your child, if this would happen to you, I mean, it's a shameful experience for a parent, you know, seeing your child in that state. But I think what I would really implore parents, it might look in the immediate circumstance as a horrible situation, but long term, supporting your child, your daughter, through her education, through taking care of the baby, and through lack of putting them down, because sometimes parents support their teenagers while putting them down. You know, putting them through this process is what would really end up empowering the girls, because in the long term, most parents are actually happy their grandchild exists, not that they don't exist. So it's those kind of views where you ask parents, please focus on the long term. Stop looking at only now, what is happening, the shame. You know, my child, I mean, all these years, what did I do wrong? You know, don't put a lot of focus on that. Put a focus on the long term. You know, it's a problem that right now seems extremely difficult, but in the long term, what it will offer you is a lot of value, because you'll have a grandchild.
And of course, earlier on, you talked about other issues that could be underlying factors to this. You talked about FGM that are still happening in this country at this day and age of the 21st century. Also, early marriages. Let me get your comments on that as well.
I mean, this is still a sad thing because, you know, culture sometimes is so difficult in terms of fighting with it. I mean, we know sometimes that as much as we put a lot of effort in terms of highlighting and finding the women who are doing this, because sometimes, sadly enough, we say the propagators tend to be even women more than men, pushing in terms of the narrative. So one of the things is that we really do, you know, call it a sad situation that is still happening right now. So our thing in terms of thinking about this sad situation is it's still health workers, it's still Ministry of Education, it's still Ministry of Health to actually, you know, pursue this issue of finding the culprits who are part of involved. I mean, for adults involved in early marriages and for women involved and men involved in FMG practices, the law needs to be clear. Can you set a jail term? You know, this is actually mutilation of children. So I think it's an implementation policy. What happens when the an old woman is caught doing FGM in Kenya right right now. You know, I mean, by the time the court process, by the time the community itself is, you know, it's so much, it just needs a punitive, clear direction. And if you're really caught doing this as a lesson to the rest, this is what is going to happen. If a man is found to have married a 15-year-old and they're living as man and wife, these are the consequences. And actually people see it happening. So it's an implementation of law as well and enforcement through our courts as well. So it's a whole chain in terms, because it's already out in the open. It's a conversation that's already spoken about. So why is it not decreasing in 2025? Because people are not being held accountable. So they must be able to bring accountability in terms of the people practicing this practice. Yeah.
And of course, given that we are also reaching our final leg of our conversation, let me get your thought in terms of moving forward. What would you like to see not only from the policymakers, but the government institutions that not only aid in your particular sector in curbing such issues like teenage pregnancy and the mortality rate that we were discussing? Going forward, what would you like to see?
I think I would say that I want to see government support, you know, companies like Baby Banda, who really work towards advocating for the mother and capacity building. I think in terms of policy, there are so many people we work with as partners in our business that come together to really support this area. So what we would like to see is government getting involved with also us in the private sector in terms of pushing this narrative and making sure that the mother is getting empowered, and there's a lot of it, and them supporting the education forums that we tend to do in terms of capacity building. And of course, this would be my wish, that we can see Ministry of Health coming to the Baby Banda Fair in terms of supporting the work that we do for the mothers and the stakeholders we bring together in our forums that we hold. Like the one now we have this weekend at Sarit Center, the Baby Banda Pregnancy Fair. I mean, it would be good if we could see officials of the Ministry of Health, you know, people from SHA come in and support this, you know, this event that we do in terms of capacity building. So for me, I would say I just want to see a lot more stakeholders, government stakeholders, actually getting involved and supporting organizations like Baby Banda in terms of the work that we do for mothers and the capacity that we build around it.
Thank you so much. That is Elizabeth Wanjiku, the director of Baby Banda. We were discussing about Kenya's mortality rate, but she's saying there is hope in the country, there is optimism, which is the word you used. And of course, in terms of teenage pregnancy, called for stakeholder approach when it comes to dealing with this particular vice. It should not be happening in the 21st century. That has been our discussion, and of course that concludes our topics this morning.